The estimates from WealthX, who produced this report, say that he's worth around $250 million. To most of Americans, that's incredibly wealthy, and in fact, that makes him the third wealthiest candidate for presidency over the past 20 years.
After who? Whom?
So the richest presidential candidate, some may forget, it was Ross Perot.
Ross Perot.
Who was worth over $3 billion.
Right, running back in 92. What was it?
His last run was in 1996.
96.
That's right. Coming in at number 2 was Steve Forbes, whose last run was in 2000, again, the advocate of the flat tax, etc. And then number 3 is Mitt Romney. Now, a lot of people assume the Bushes were very wealthy, right, which they were, but George H.W. Was worth around $30 million, and George W. doesn't even make the list.
And it begins to drop off pretty steadily looking at this list, which is on WSJ.com on your posting, but you know, you see John Kerry at $240 million, then Al Gore at $100 million, then it starts to taper off after that, right, into the Clintons and so forth.
And what's interesting is, you know, in the political world, we say, well, wealth always helps. And in past elections, there was this idea, if some guy got really wealthy, he must have some management secrets that can apply to the country, and that maybe we can all sort of benefit from his ideas about creating prosperity. I think the American electorate now has a slightly different view of wealth. They're very skeptical of somebody who was born with a lot of wealth, as Romney was, earned a lot, as he did, in something that Americans have a hard time understanding, which is consulting. Right, and so I think this is going to be a double-edged sword for him, and we've seen it even within the Republican race, where he got into this tiff with Newt Gingrich, right, calling Gingrich a very wealthy man, which is ironic coming from a guy worth $250 million. So this is going to be sort of a really difficult thing for him to grapple with, as Americans have a more sort of tenuous view of the wealthy.
And obviously, looking at Ross Perot and Steve Forbes, I mean, their bids did not prove profitable for them in that way. And that's I wonder too, now coming in the midst of Occupy Wall Street, if it's not just the most wrong time to be rich, you know, if you're running for president in some ways.
Well, there was a little bit of a precursor to this in the 2010 elections, where we saw at the state level a lot of really rich people who financed their own campaigns. Meg Whitman, you had Jeff Green in Florida, people who were millionaires who didn't win. In fact, you know, the vast majority of rich people in the last election lost on a state level. I think that's going to really be an indication of how voters feel about the wealthy in this presidential election. I think especially with Obama using inequality as a big issue for Americans, this is going to be Romney's fight.
You've actually seen Romney's sons in recent days sort of trying to portray their dad as quote, cheap in some ways, saying, you know, my dad made us build our own fence and he's the cheapest guy I know, and sort of taking great pains. But very quickly, Robert, can you play down the fact that you're that rich, or does that just seem not genuine? I
think it's not genuine. I mean, look, all the photos I've seen of Romney recently have him in wearing jeans. Right. They're really expensive designer jeans, but I think I don't think, you know, he's going to be able to ignore it. When you make bets for $10,000 during the debate, as he did, as if it was pocket change, I think those are the kind of slips that people are going to be waiting for. And either way, I think he's got to redirect attention on his policies and away from his wealth.